Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Franchise Your Success. And we have Coach Dan in the house. How are you doing, Coach
Oh,
Dan?
wonderful. It's always good to be here with you guys.
That's amazing. And as we said on the previous episode, we were going to talk about how to have a franchise while keeping your job. Is that a possibility, Dan?
Yeah, it really is. I've seen it happen so many times, hundreds and hundreds of times. But, let me paint the bigger vision first of all, and then we'll kind of back up to the steps that take you to get that bigger vision. I think a lot of us think about, okay, if I start my own business, I want freedom. Money is great. Money allows us to have that freedom when we've got more passive or residual or ongoing income coming in. That allows us to get to that freedom. But I just think of a friend of mine who actually built an amazing master franchise program, which is an area representative program. He started out and he built it up, and he worked hard, and he got several franchisees open, and then pretty soon the royalties started flowing in, and he started generating some significant income. And he decided, you know what, I'm going to retire. So he hired a regional director to come in and manage his assets and manage the franchisees for him. A very capable person, paid him very well because he had enough money to do that. And he backed off entirely, and he came in the office maybe once a year just to see what was going on, because he just continued to. His manager was so good, he just kept banking the money month after month, year after year, and was able to just not spend a lot of time in the office because he had good people in place and he worked hard to get to that point. So that was probably one of the only true, well, not one of them, there's several of them, but absentee owned businesses. So maybe we all want to get to that point where we do have it absentee owned, but for most of us, we got to start thinking about absentee owned businesses equal absentee profits. And I've talked about that before because it's an important point. You got to spend a little bit of time into it. But to get to that point, like my friend, where he didn't have to come in at all and anymore, it can be done and is being done all the time. But until that point, we want to look at how we get there. And so looking at a semi-absentee owned business, let me just talk about what that is. Well, first of all, you have three different ways to look at managing a business. There's full-time, which basically you're just buying yourself a job, but it may be a happy job because it's your own business and that's what you feel like you want to do. So you can spend your 40 hours a week instead of working over here at corporate, coming in and working in your own business. You're in your own storefront. You enjoy working with the clients that come in the door and helping them and supporting them and managing the business with your employees. So maybe you like that, and it's still maybe better than corporate. So that's full-time in a franchise. But the sweet spot that I like, and I've enjoyed working with most in my franchise career, has been the semi-absentee owned model. So that's where we're going to spend, I think, most of our time today, if that's okay with you.
Sounds great. Yeah.
So semi-absentee owned means this and that means you're spending some time in it so that you're leveraging your time so that you can maximize the profit for the time that you're putting in. So once you get the business up and running, it usually you can spend that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a week, depending on the business. And what are you doing for those hours? Once it's up and running, like I'll take, for example, the businesses that I've run with the massage clinic. I've never given a massage to a client, and I never will because I'm not trained to do that, nor am I certified or licensed to do that. I get in trouble. So I can't give a massage. So, but I had massage therapists who were, and they did the work. So what do I do? Since I can't give a massage, what are my functions? Well, my main functions were in the beginning to help that business grow I could sit behind the front counter, but I didn't do that very often because I had a person that was better at that than me, sitting behind that front counter to greet the clients as they came in the door and help make sure they're happy and situated and move in the right place. But what I could do is I could look around and I could see if the shelving, if the display products were looking good, and I can look and see that it was clean. And if there was something that needed to be cleaned, sometimes to show good leadership, you go get the vacuum out and you vacuum it yourself as a business owner. And don't be afraid to do that. How long does it take you? 5 minutes. So what? You're not cleaning the whole place. You're going to assign employees to do that, of course, but be the leader by example. So you're doing things like that. But probably the biggest and most important thing is building that culture. So it's going back on the back bulletin board and posting positive thoughts and accolades and congratulating and being grateful for the team that you have on board. Maybe bringing in lunch when you go out, and I've gone out and I've left in my car. Hey, you hungry? Let me bring you lunch. I drive out, go through the drive-through, order the pizza or whatever myself. How much time does it take me to do that? Half hour? A week? It's worth doing that because they appreciate those little things that you do for them. So building that culture. The second thing you do, probably the secondary to that and most important, because you don't have a business without it, is that's marketing. You got to drive customers in the door. So as a business owner, you typically don't leave that marketing to someone else. You're going to want to pay attention to that. And so whatever the franchisor is telling you to do is teaming up with this agency or using this Facebook over here or using direct mail or whatever media you're using, you want to pay attention to, and you'll have those same contacts in your area, and you'll be the one placing the ads and marketing and making sure it's done properly and then analyzing the results. So that might take you a whopping couple hours a week. So once you get the business up and running smooth, those are some of the main things you'd be focusing on as a semi-absentee owner, because you're wanting to get a proper return on investment. And we'll talk about that. Well, let me just talk about that. I mean, Marjorie, if you were to invest in a business, what would you like your hourly rate to be? I mean, you as a younger generation, if you could say, okay, I'm making X amount of money, I'm just throwing out a number. Let's say you make $50 an hour right now in your positions and things you're doing. What would you like to see it be if you were a business owner per hour?
I don't know, like around 100, kind of like doubling it.
So yeah, you'd like to see it double. I think that's a good standard. So if you have $100 an hour times 50 hours a week, roughly, that's what. That's 5,000 a week. If I did my calculation correct, that's 5,000 a week or 20,000 a month. Okay. So if you're $100 an hour is pretty darn good return.
For sure.
So that's where we want to be. So $100 an hour. And if you're spending 10 hours a week, that's, basically equivalent to, so if you're spending, I'm trying to think this through my mind without my calculator in front of me. So if you got $100 and you're spending $10, that's $1,000. That's basically equivalent to $1,000 a week. That's $4,000 a month, basically, or roughly $50,000 a year in investment. So would you invest, the question out there to pose to you, would you invest $60,000 or $70,000 out of pocket to make 50, 60, 70,000 back? You can see that your rate of return, if you were to make that kind of money, and there's all kinds of financial representations you can see in the books and the franchise disclosure documents that show that. But if you can make $60,000 a year and you're putting, and you're generating that $100 an hour, is it worth it to you?
For sure.
So it's sure, because it's equivalent to a couple $100,000 a year, maybe more than that. But what happens if you start making $100,000 a year net or $200,000 per year net out of one or two franchises, and you're only spending that 5 hours a week, or maybe you're spending 10 hours a week? The leverage you're getting is huge compared to what you're getting on your job. But here's the most important thing about it, is not only are you getting good return for your time, but now you have an asset you can turn around and sell. So if in any business, you usually look for that multiple. So if you take the cash flow, what we call owner's discretionary cash flow, or EBITDA, or earnings before interest, tax, and depreciation and allocation, whatever you want to call it. But if you take the earnings and multiply that by a multiplier, let's say a typical business might be 2.5 times. So if it's earning 100,000 a year cash flow, multiply that, you want to sell it by 2.5, that's 250,000. In a franchise, that's usually bigger. And you're usually benefiting from the franchise name. And so that EBITDA, or that multiplier on the owner's discretionary cash flow, is many times much higher. It might be 3.5, 4. In master franchising, we see as high as 4 to 9 times that cash flow. So, but if you take, let's say it's doing 100,000 and you take a multiplier 4, then you have a business that's worth 400,000. So, and you built it, and you can build that up hopefully fairly quickly. So not only are you generating the cash flow, cash on cash return, which is higher and on your time, but you're also building an asset that you could turn around and sell down the road, perhaps as much or more than a house. And it grows faster sometimes than real estate. So
That's
that would be an
amazing.
analysis you'd have to look at.
For sure. And what I feel like is like with having a semi-absentee franchise, you can still keep your job, like your current job, for a little bit at least, because you're just devoting like 5 or 6 hours per week on your own business.
Right.
And once your business is big enough, you can just leave your job and just dedicate full time to your business, still as a semi-absentee. So you get to have a whole bunch of freedom. So that's amazing. What are some of the other benefits that you have seen about having a semi-absentee model franchise?
Well, the big benefits, of course, of the return on investment in your time is you get that fine tuned. And let's say you start getting into your second and third locations and you're still spending that 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a week. Now you've got 2 or 3 locations open. Now the leverage on your time is even better. So some of the big benefits, of course, are the time and the return on investment. And we just, of course, talked a little bit about that. But the semi-absentee owned model, keeping your own job, is a great thing to look at. And that's the question I always look at when I talk to people and interview them for the possibility of becoming a franchise owner, is tell me about your job. Tell me about your main way of earning your living, because we would never want to harm that person's livelihood and take away from their employer their precious time from that and get them in trouble where they might lose that job. So we always talk about the flexibility of the job or the current career that they're in. Do they have that flexibility? And that's one of the benefits of the pandemic, is a lot of people now have returned home and they still continue to work at home. I mean, I have a very nice office building up the street here, but I've turned it into a clinic where we're making profit, rather than have employees come back from the pandemic and sitting there in the office where I got to pay them to be there, and they want to be at home anyway, and they're still productive. So why not leverage that, make some money off that? But what's happened is people working at home now have a little more flexibility, as long as they can get their job done properly and can give that honest day's labor or work for their job to their employer, never take away from that aspect. Why not leverage some of that in between time when you're taking your lunch and when you're taking your break and when the evening and weekends and whatever, to leverage that time to build your own business? The return on time and the return on investment is huge. And then if you can end up like my friend, who ended up building it so big that he was able to just back away, let them run it, and then eventually he sold it for 8 figures.
Oh, so. Wow. That's amazing. So also, if we wanted to get into a semi-absentee model of franchise, what are some of the requirements that we would need? Because it sounds like the dream, no kidding. You get to keep your job while you're building your business, and once it's big, you can just dedicate to your business. So what are some of the requirements that you would need for doing this?
Well, first of all, time. Let's look at time. That's our most precious asset. So it's not like you just jump into it and you're spending those 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a week and smooth and all taken care of. There's a learning curve with any business, but fortunately with franchising, you have a high success rate. So what happens when you jump into that type of a business, you've still got to go through the training, because you don't want to send your employees to training and say, okay, you guys just go and I'll catch up with you later. You want to be the leader. So you go to training with them, and usually it's a 4, 5, 6 day training session. Sometimes it can be a little bit longer than that, depending on your franchise. So you want to ask that question up front and understand that, and it's actually documented in the franchise disclosure document, and what that training is about, how long it's going to be in class, and of course um, at the location. So look at the time that you're going to spend in training, because you'll need to do that as a good leader of your business. So if it's a week's worth, you're going to take your vacation time and from your job and go do that along with your employees. So you're going to give up some fun to go build something, a long-term asset. And then when you're ready to open up your location, you might need to take a little more time off too, to be there as it's being opened up, because you don't want to be absentee when your business is being opened. Now you probably have people from the corporate office there helping you to get it open, and they're going to be there to lean on and support you to make sure that the mistakes are minimized, which there will be, but you'll want to be there too. So that might be a time when you take another couple days off and be there full time on those days. So you want to spend a little bit of time getting it going, getting a feel for it, and then you can back off once you feel comfortable and do the things that we just described earlier.
That's amazing. Yeah. So I feel like once the business itself starts like getting more speed and like growing by itself, you can just like back off a little bit. So that gives a lot of flexibility. Have you seen any downsides with having a semi-absentee model?
Yeah. Of course, there's a couple different things to look at there. Is the expectation set properly when you own the franchise? And every franchise is different, how much time you're going to need to spend in the beginning to get it to the point where it is semi-absentee owned. And eventually down the road, when you get so big and so efficient that it can be more absentee owned, that's a little more rare. But you got to understand the expectations up front. So I would spend some time with the franchisor and even talking to franchisees on how much time they spent getting their business set up in the first place. So that's number one. Number two is when it's up and running and operating, some of the challenges you might have, as I've seen, you're sitting there at your desk and you're working your normal job and everything's cool. And then you get a phone call or a text from your store manager and say, oh, the power just went off. What do we do? Or I've seen it where we had a flood. The sink flooded in the back and it's flooding everything out. Or of course, the pandemic, when that started, we've got to shut down. Oof. So there's those things you need to be prepared to react to. But the thing is, with your employer, with your job, they're probably going to be pretty flexible with you and lenient with you. For example, let's say, heaven forbid, you had something happen with your child and they got in an accident at school and you had to go take care of that. Well, you'd leave your job and go take care of that. So there's ways to do that and anticipate those types of things. So those accidents and those problems usually don't occur that often, but you need to just have that in your back of your mind, that you need to have a flexible job. Now, if you're a doctor and you're in surgery, you probably can't get away from something that important. Mm-hmm. So you need to have that in consideration, that there is someone, maybe it's a spouse or a friend or a sibling or a child, that can jump in for you during that emergency. So you just need to plan for those contingencies. Other than that, it basically runs pretty smooth as long as you follow the system that's been created by that franchisor. It can be amazing how smooth that can be.
And I just love the fact that when having a franchise, you can just not be the only boss, but you can also involve your family, your friends. You have that support group in a franchise. That's amazing. Right. What are some other of the benefits that you have seen about having a semi-absentee model? Because you have owned quite a bit of them right now.
Yeah, you can go on and on. Like I said, time and money are the big things. But here's the important one. By being a franchisee, what it allows you to do, and what I've done is, I've been able to, so when my children have been in athletics in high school, I've been able to, they come around and they want to have a sponsor and they want to have, put up the sign. So I'd be able to put up the sign with my business on the football field or something. Oh, cool. So they can see that I'm one of the sponsors, or it goes into the program. Now, you're not going to get probably good return on that as an advertisement, but it's just nice to know that you can be supported in it. And that doesn't cost you really any more of your time. It's just a good investment that allows you to give back to the community. And of course, you can use community causes. I remember Susan G. Coleman, her program. We used to use her program in some of our franchises to support that for breast cancer, and other things like that we could get behind and support. So that that's a real huge benefit of a franchise, not only semi-absentee owned, but a franchise period, is you give back to the community. And so the other thing is, with a franchise that starts to become more and more well known, it starts to be prestigious, because if you own 1, 2, 3, 4 locations in the area, oh, that's so and so. He owns those franchises in the area. It's prestigious. It's something that you can help give back to the community and feel good about. So it's just a fun thing to be able to do. There's a lot of side benefits like that of owning your own business.
And I feel like that's the biggest paycheck that you can get.
Oh,
having the happiness on the people around you in the community
Serving
that you're
others.
having your franchise.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much again, Dan. And it's really cool that now we know what a really semi-absentee model is on a franchise, and so many benefits. We definitely should invest in that.
Yeah,
I'm sold.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you so much to everyone in our audience for hearing us today. And stay tuned, because on our next episode, we're going to be talking about the 5 skills that you need to be successful in your franchise.